The FDA recently approved the first genetically modified animal ever, genetically modified salmon, which is made by combining ocean pout and Atlantic salmon to produce a much faster growing fish. It has also sparked a debate about the labeling of GMO foods, specifically salmon. Is it mandatory to label GMO foods? There are no mandatory regulations requiring that Aqua Advantage fish be labeled as genetically altered. The FDA has issued 2 recommendations asking manufacturers to voluntarily label their products and guide consumers about how to note the genetic changes in GMO foods. These recommendations are not enforceable, leaving the choice to keep consumers informed entirely up to food manufacturers. Scott Faber, executive director of Just Label It, states, "The decision to approve GMO salmon without mandatory disclosure is yet another example of how FDA's outdated policy keeps consumers in the dark. Salmon is the first approved animal GMO for sale in the United States, but up to 80% of processed foods in the U.S. contain GMOs, mostly from plant crops." What are GMOs? Organisms whose genetic machinery is changed to produce some sort of desirable effect in that organism's biology. These modifications have the potential to help us overcome some of the adversities facing the modern world: the increased production of food to sustain Earth's ever-growing population, the immunization of crops against diseases with the strength to entirely devastate them, and the use of certain GMOs to produce human vaccines for fighting disease. So are GMOs safe for human consumption? This depends partly on the nature of the product genetically modified for consumption. Certain GMO plants are merely utilized in the synthesization of other food products which contain a negligible amount of the base modified DNA. For example, canola is genetically modified to be pesticide resistant, but the part of canola we consume is the oil, which through its refinement process loses nearly all traces of the base plant's anatomy. The danger in GMO food lies in the products which are more directly consumed, such as GMO salmon. These are the food items that go from the farm to our plate with relatively little processing in between. Some already approved foods, such as GMO tomatoes for example, have passed rigorous testing which shows they are virtually equivalent in safety to their non-GMO counterparts. But that is not always the case. While that strain of tomato was comparable with its natural counterpart, GMO soybean strains have shown the potential to be significantly different from their natural counterparts. How can GMO salmon affect the environment? As of right now, many companies do not believe that it is possible for GMO salmon to escape into the environment. AquaBounty states that it is unlikely as they plan to grow Aqua Advantage salmon in land-based tanks. They also only plan to grow females who are sterile, further decreasing the likelihood that breeding in the wild would occur. On the other hand, some environmentalists point out that the company's egg production facility, which is located on Prince Edward Island, is near an estuary that feeds into the ocean. In addition to this, fish would be allowed to mature at a location in Panama, near a river, potentially providing an escape route. It is unclear yet whether the changes made to the genes of these fish could harm fish, but studies have shown that the genetically modified salmon behave differently than wild salmon when placed together. The GMO fish tend to eat more to support their growth-promoting genes, a behavior that could allow them to outcompete wild salmon. In addition, GMO salmon also display a tendency to spend time at the water's surface alone, as opposed to schooling, and seem to make no attempts at predator avoidance when approached by humans. They have also been shown to have reduced immune function compared to wild salmon. The future and safety of GMOs are clearly up to debate, but one thing is clear: we are entering a period of intense risk, and the consumer has a right to know about that risk and decide whether or not they want to participate in it when they buy salmon from the grocery store.